Please go ahead, sir. We are live now.
Okay, thank you. So a very good afternoon to everyone. I have great pleasure in welcoming our chief guest, Ambassador Anil Tringunia, to this webinar. We are very grateful to you, sir, for accepting our request to join at this occasion. You had been a very supportive and very helpful in the past also when we had visited many countries, and you were readily your embassy and every support we got in the past as well. And this time also we are really grateful to you, sir, and we welcome you on this occasion. I am also glad to welcome Mr. Praveen Kumar, Director, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. My special welcome to all the representatives of Indian embassies in UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, Oman, and Morocco. Those who have joined, and they have find time for us to join at this important webinar. I also welcome Mr. Vivek Chandra, Co-Chairman of ASSOCHAM's National Council on Food Processing and Value Addition, and Mr. Raveen Gulati, Head Business Development of DP World. As we all know, India-WANA has great partnership in our bilateral trade and investment relations. So to discuss these opportunities, we have organized this webinar. The webinar is a part of our virtual expo, which is also starting today. We are grateful to Ministry of Commerce and Industry for providing its full support to this event. With these words, I now request Mr. Vivek Chandra to kindly give his perspective on the subject. Mr. Chandra, please.
Thank you, Mr. Rajora, and I join Mr. D.S. Rajora in welcoming all the experts and panelists to this webinar on enhancing India-WANA partnership in food sector. I would also like to accord my special welcome to His Excellency, Mr. Anil Trigunath, former ambassador, for being with us at this important event. West Asia and North Africa, or the WANA region, is a very large group of nations and occupies an important position in the bilateral trade and investment relations with India. I would not like to mention any trade statistics here because all the panelists here are experts on each country trade matters and have much deeper knowledge on this aspect. And they will certainly share their perspective and relevant facts and statistics on the subject. Most importantly, we look forward to hearing from them on the opportunities for further advancing the cooperation into investment and trade between the WANA region and India in the food sector. From the trade perspective, there are a number of items which are bilaterally traded between WANA and India. And the value of this last year was about $165 billion. But our focus today is on the food sector. This is an important sector in every country, from meeting the basic dietary and nutrition needs to satisfying the emerging needs from growing incomes and prosperities in the economies and the ever-evolving lifestyle-related consumption needs. Despite the fact that there are different requirements and different tastes, various food items are globally traded. And here there are more commonalities than differences between WANA and India. And the food sector is thus a big component of the trade between the two. Agri-commodities, processed food, frozen food, food processing technology, packaging, and supply chain and logistics services are broadly the common items in areas which are in demand at various destinations. India, being a large nation, has availability of all types of foodstuffs to cater to the WANA countries, whether it is spices, food grains, marine products, fruits and vegetables, or processed foods, frozen or ready-to-eat foods. India also has capabilities for food processing technologies and packaging services across food items. India's food processing sector is one of the largest in the world, and its output is expected to reach $535 billion by 2025-26. More recently, Prime Minister Shri Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat vision The scheme of formalization of micro food processing enterprises, FME, is being rolled out with an outlay of 10,000 crores. The recent budget has also laid emphasis on this sector and made budgetary provisions for development of value add and upstream food processing industries, apart from the announcement of creating food processing parks and development of fisheries and food and vegetable processing. Buoyed by such actions, India's food sector attracted $4.18 billion in FDIs between April and March 2020, April 2014, March 2020. India is one of the largest producers of a range of agriculture products, and as the global population grows, demand for made in India food is ever rising. India has a strategic geographical location which gives it a unique advantage when it comes to exports. The country has convenient connectivity to most of the WANA region, which can further provide various opportunities to Indian companies. As the food habits are changing rapidly towards fast food, newer food retail formats are increasing their role for aligning consumer preferences. The rising number of restaurants, a consequence of the changing culinary and eating preferences in India, is a harbinger of business for the manufacturers of commercial kitchen equipments, like commercial fryers, char broilers, ovens, cooking ranges, microwaves, toasters, and food warming equipment, to name a few. There can be partnerships in such emerging ventures as well. Some of the Indian companies are well aware of the food market in WANA, but many Indian companies are still trying to find out right place for their right items. And now with this forum, I hope that participants will get immense knowledge about the products which are in demand in WANA in the individual countries, and accordingly, our exporters and our manufacturers will plan their approaches to these markets and seek opportunities to cooperate in these markets. There is competition everywhere, and food sector is not an exception to this. But India's ability to deliver high quality and safe food, which meets all the required standards in the importing countries, can play a significant role in taking a lead in our food sector partnership between India and WANA. There are many experts who are available today on this subject, and I eagerly look forward to hearing them and hearing their advice on today's theme of enhancing India-WANA partnership in the food sector. Thank you all for taking the time to be here, and I look forward to our session to be productive, informative, and a session which leads to more trade and more cooperation between the two regions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Vivek Chandra, for giving Indian perspective on the food sector. May I now request Mr. Raveen Gulati, Head Business Development, DP World, to please give his perspective.
Hi, good morning. Can I share a presentation? Okay, I hope you can see the slides that I'm sharing.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Good morning, His Excellencies. An honor to be part of this panel and put in across our thoughts. We'll obviously bring in a little commercial perspective, and Rajiv ji actually summed up the scenario in the Indian industry very adequately. We as DP World are a global trade enabler, and we believe India lies at the threshold of a very big opportunity. So when we look at the MEA region, which is largely, Middle East and Africa, so similar to West Africa and or West Asia and North Africa, we're looking at a food and demand of more than $200 odd billion over the next few years, right? Particularly down to the GCC, nearly 85% of the food is imported, and largely India remains a very big breadbasket for the region around us, right? We're expecting CAGR over the next 3 to 5 years of more than 10% in terms of food demand. And the chunk of the population is rather young, so very similar to the population base in India, growing young population, and obviously the GDP per capita is on a higher trajectory than India, so the consuming power of most of these countries remains higher. So yes, India's role as a food provider, as a food security provider, can only enhance. And the pandemic that we've witnessing and been experiencing over the past year solidifies the opportunity that India has in terms of providing food, both agri and processed and finished foods to these markets, right? I'll jump into a little more on DP World. We're a global trade enabler. We fundamentally envision moving goods from A to B. We have a presence in more than 50 countries around the world. We operate marine terminals, we operate economic zones and logistic zones, we operate shipping services and logistics businesses around the world, right? So our home base is Dubai, fundamentally city for trade. I'm sure most of you have traveled either to Dubai or via Dubai across the world. In Dubai, in the port city of Jebel Ali, which is our flagship, we have 100 square kilometers of land, and an integrated port and logistics, trade, industrial free zone that we operate and we manage. Herein lies the secret of our success, and herein is how Dubai positions itself as being able to cater to the WANA markets. And we believe that we remain very adequately positioned to help India reach out to these markets, right? So on the Indian side, we are also very adequately positioned. We've got a presence across the logistics domain in India. We are India's largest terminal operator in terms of container terminals. We've got a presence on a number of ICDs and CFS stations across the country. We operate rail rakes, and then we have moved into shipping services last year with the acquisition of a few shipping companies. So it was only prior to actually the pandemic commenced last year that we started integrating our service offering to customers between the Indian continent and the UAE, and we call that project as the India-UAE Bridge, right? Subsequently, what we've been doing is we've been working on connecting the African continent to the UAE as well. And the vision herein lies is that through India, we can connect India and Africa via the UAE, enhancing Dubai's role that has been played by it over the last few decades. But however, we've got a very strong lineup of assets between India and we've got a number of African assets as well now. So connectivity remains a key vision behind this, and we're happy to support the Indian industry, particularly the FMD industry, reach out, be it markets in West Asia or North Africa, right? Recently, the UAE signed a peace treaty with Israel, the Abraham Accords, which I'm sure everybody is well versed of. That remains a new, rather new market to be explored as well for businesses. And we invite people, we invite businesses to look into that via over Dubai as well, right? So just a little, I want to add on to what Rajiv ji mentioned earlier in terms of F&B capabilities and what exactly happens in our zone. So we do a sizable amount of tea processing. Raw tea comes in from India, from Kenya, and then is exported to more than 70, 80 countries around the world, right? We do within the zone, there are, there's a fish farm, there is chocolate processing and related packaging units. There is obviously a sizable amount of canned food processing that happens within our ecosystem. We've got debatably the world's largest sugar refinery on the quayside out here. So you realize that all of this infrastructure and all of these services have been built up in an ecosystem where there is no agriculture and there is no farming that really happens at our back end. So raw materials are coming, or semi-finished goods and semi-finished packaged goods are brought in. Last mile delivery, last mile customization, particularly with food regulations being different in different countries. There is a lot of value add that is required before hitting different countries. So it enables the Indian exporters to actually push the food out into Jiblali, where they can customize and package for respective countries, and then subsequently move it on from here, enhancing and taking care of a single inventory and positioning themselves to a global audience, right? So essentially it's a whiteboard matrix on what can be done out here. We've recently, and we are in the process of actually releasing more quayside space for development of F&B processing and agri value add. We are in discussions with a number of Indian entities, and we look forward to working with them. Obviously, it's geared towards food security within the GCC, within the West Asia region, and also it comes in at the right opportune moment, because they just happen to be moving our container terminal operations from our first terminal 1 into terminal 4, which gives us sizable pre-existing infrastructure that can be customized and that can be developed for the food and the agri processing industry. Infrastructure like this is seldom available in the world. It's a once in a century opportunity, and we are open to looking at any and all business plans and working with the industry to see how we can work together in enhancing their value proposition externally, right? To sum up, we believe we are your adequate gateway into the WANA region. Our capabilities go across the trade enablement cycle, whether you need logistic support or shipping support, whether you need an industrial development land or a quayside facility, whether you need a port to harbor your ships, or you need digital solutions to enhance your supply chain capabilities, we remain available for you, ladies and gents. Thank you, sir. I'm done, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gulati, for giving a holistic view of the supply chain services of food sector and connecting India and other parts of the world through your Grow. And now I have great pleasure in inviting Mr. Praveen Kumar, Director, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India, to kindly share his thoughts on this subject.
So thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. It was a very fruitful presentation and a lot of learning from the presentation made by the previous speaker. In the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, what we strive to do here is to look into the non-tariff barriers between India and the WANA region, because there are a couple of ways through which you can enhance trade. One is to look into the areas which are impeding the trade, and to take the other way is to take steps which can promote trade between the two countries. So when we talk about promotion of trade from our country point of view, we essentially mean the promotion of exports. So if we look at the trends of our, as far as India-WANA trade is concerned, we the data which tells us story is very interesting, that there has been a very handsome growth in terms of CAGR as far as our food exports is concerned from India to WANA region. That is giving us a learning, like across all categories of food, be it dairy products, horticulture, exports or processed food, the CAGR is coming out to be around 6 to 7%. There are other statistics which are also very interesting, that when we talk about our exports, in terms of, the share of the food articles in total exports to WANA, the share is close to 15 to 20%. But when you talk about the, WANA's global import of these food items, we stand nowhere, to be very honest. It's close to 1 to 2%, or in some category, it is even less than that. So that is the area where the potential lies. And these are the items which we are exporting to the rest of the world, but not to the WANA region, especially the GCC. One potential reason, the area which requires a lot of work is that, we will have to, acknowledge the fact that these countries are moving from Codex standards to European standards as far as the food products are concerned. And that is the area where we need to work a lot in order to tap the market in these countries. Because unless we address those capacity issues in terms of our rating and MRL and the pesticides content, we will not be able to tap this potential which these countries reflect. And that is the challenge for us to actually come up with better standards. And our agencies like APEDA and others are very much into this, and we keep receiving these kind of issues from our missions, and we keep addressing also to the extent possible. But again, it's not the government which does the trade, it is the industry. Government's role here is to facilitate, to lay down the regulations, to monitor the qualities and all. So we will have to see it in terms of where do we stand when it comes to India's share in their global import, which is not more than 1%. That's one area. And, as far as the NTBs are concerned, as I told, that we have been taking up those issues with these countries through our missions, and missions have been really very, very their response has been very, very encouraging. So, and this has to be a continuous process. So we here in the Department of Commerce have evolved the process of negotiating or taking up these issues with our counterparts in foreign countries through our missions on regular basis, where the missions are playing crucial role. So if I divide the entire food articles the category into subcategories, I do see a huge growth pattern in as far as the processed food category is concerned. The kind of growth it has reflected in last 10 years is to the tune of 12% in terms of CAGR, while the other food items like dairy products have shown not as handsome as 12%, but to the extent of 6% and 5%. Similarly is the story of horticulture products. So processed food could be one area where we need to focus. Second thing is that countries like UAE, they have been doing a lot of re-exports of these food products. So how do we tap that area? That is also very important. So the value added products is one area, and we need to address the MRL and the PBT SPS issues, which is very, very important. So if we address those things and focus on more on the value added items here in India, I think we would be able to achieve the desired results to the extent possible. And if you look at the WANA's global imports, the trend in food products, especially the processed food, the compound annual growth rate is to the tune of 4.5% in last 10 years. But our, their import from India in this category has, registered a CAGR of less than 1%, around 0.71% in last 10 years. So processed food, we are lacking a lot, and we need to focus on these products. And with this, I would like to conclude my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for highlighting many important areas for enhancing food sector trade between India and WANA, and also advising our exporters to focus on value addition products. This will certainly help them. I now have great pleasure to invite our chief guest, Ambassador Anil Trigunyar, sir, to kindly share your huge and vast experience on the subject, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rajora, for the invite. Distinguished speakers from the industry, the Director, Shri Praveen Kumar from Ministry of Commerce, my colleagues, the commercial representatives from various missions in the WANA region, members of the business and industry attending this webinar. I'm really so happy to be part of this webinar, which is focusing on food sector collaboration with WANA countries, which in my view is probably the most important region from foreign and economic policy perspective, and truly an essential strategy for our own survival. Simply put, it's a huge market matrix that applies both ways. And as Mr. Praveen Kumar and Mr. Chandra both spoke about this, and also the DP world as to exactly how we can facilitate it through UAE and elsewhere, there is a tremendous potential. So as we already have several experts and Indian representatives from the government and the Indian missions who would share various bilateral opportunities with you, I would prefer to focus on some broader issues for your consideration, which might ipso facto apply to the region and could provide us greater opportunities to be part of the global and regional value and supply chains as envisaged under the Atmanirbhar Bharat mission of the Government of India. I would request you to focus on 4H in my view now, in view of the pandemic that has always existed, the problem, but that was never into the main focus, which confront the humanity today. Basically, you have to look at the health, hunger, you have to look at high technology, and the habitat. These are the 4 things, and all 4 impact the WANA region, India in particular, and rest of the world in general. In addition, we are also facing a consequent economic downturn. In your region also, it is causing more stress due to low demand and lower oil prices, which is a challenge in a circular and cyclical manner. We might be happy by the low international oil prices, but that impacts the market's power to buy your products in turn, and the vicious cycle thus begins. We have to be also mindful of increasing protectionism in the global market, as WTO has been shoved towards irrelevance, at least for now. And as Mr. Kumar spoke about the TBTs and the NTBs, they play a great role. And our colleagues who are posted in the WANA region would definitely come across many. I also come across many requests from people to intervene because their products or their supplies have been not accepted. So there is definitely a great need for us to improve our quality standards. It's accepted. Now, if we were to look at, we have a certain advantage in the region. And that is, in short, I would like to say that we have excellent and historic relations with all the countries in the region. And these are based on trade and people-to-people connect. Since the times of, I would say, Dilmun civilization, if not before. No doubt, Indians and India are generally liked by all, which is a big plus and provides us an unfair advantage perceived by some. So with little and sincere efforts in your outreach, results could be disproportionately good. Not to say that the markets are easy, as has been mentioned earlier. but high caliber quality control and timely supplies would win us the fair share of the market. That is, for the time being, missing. We have a great story to tell as we embark on second generation green revolution, which means we have to do a little more in terms of our marketing as well. During the past 50, 60 years, we have gone from food aid dependency to becoming a consistent net exporter of food. Food grains and oilseeds still account for almost 80% of the crop area. Though India has diversified into high value commodities and has become the world's largest producer of milk, pulses, horticulture, and livestock, as well as the top exporter of shrimp and spices globally. So our crop yields have also tripled because of the various technological advances that we have done, but we are still relatively low by regional standards. Despite increased area under irrigation, over half of India's total cropped area and 40% of all crop production, according to the statistics, are still rain-fed and more vulnerable to monsoon variability. So consequently, Indian agriculture is highly vulnerable to climate change. Seasonal scarcity of water, rising temperature, more frequent drought risks, and that's what I mentioned about the habitat aspect. For us, agriculture is extremely important and it needs to be modernized. We have seen the farm laws have been brought in, but there is some problem that is being faced right now because agriculture employs nearly 42% of India's workforce and contributes only 17 to 18% to the GDP, but it is extremely important for our survival. And therefore, it is extremely necessary that we focus not only on this, but with the collaborations in the regions. I would not go into the export-import figures per se, but I would like to say that our trade with the region has mostly been conducted on the free foreign exchange. Mutually most favored nation treatment is accorded in respect to trade with most of these countries. But some of these countries, particularly Gulf countries, have largely free economies. While in countries like Iraq, Libya, Jordan, Morocco, and Syria, imports are regulated by state-owned organizations to varying extents. So therefore, it gives you an idea that where do we focus essentially. I mean, UAE was at one time, when I was Joint Secretary in the Gulf Division, was the second largest trading partner for India because of the re-exports to various regions across the world, including to our Western neighborhood. So we have to work together not only with the Gulf countries, and I remember that all the time they have been wanting to participate in India's agriculture through their investments. And that is something we need to do because we have to create possibilities of creating the green corridors, the food parks, which have just come up now in the budget. But I believe that we have to do much more to attract them, as has been mentioned by others. We have to work together. How do we work together? Now, recently, as was mentioned by the DP World representative, that they have Abraham Accords were signed with UAE, Bahrain in the region, and the other countries have formal or informal relations with Israel. Now, Israel's technologies, especially in the agriculture sector, are extremely important. They have helped us in India. There are several projects that are going on. They can help also in the Middle East. But I would like to go a step ahead. I would say that food security, both for us and for the WANA region, is extremely important. They want to invest in it. But in India, we have a land constraint, or probably the productivity constraint also, supplies as well, because we have our own requirements. So in my view, and this has been discussed many times with our friends in the Gulf countries, they are willing to work with us in Africa, for example. I mean, there the farms are available, or the land, cultivable agricultural land is available in very large quantities. And they are generally, most of the land is very fertile too. So is it possible that we look at that Indian companies who have the practice in agriculture and food processing, who have tremendous experience, the countries in the Middle East who are looking to ensure their food security, and perhaps the Israeli technology. So all three can combine together and develop into a mutually beneficial partnerships in the different regions, especially in Africa, which could be good for them and good for us. So that is one thing I would suggest our friends from the industry and our embassies to basically look at. Horticulture exports was mentioned, and this is yet another area of focus. The WANA region indeed has a great potential for the horticulture. We have the wherewithal to use it to the best of our advantage. And we know that many countries in the GCC are the big importers of this. UAE to begin with, Saudi Arabia is the second one, Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait. Then Oman is also the largest importer of walnuts in the region. Saudi Arabia is the highest importer of fresh vegetables. Onions are almost equally imported with less dispersion by each country. Can we capture that market? So we do have that market, but we could do it. I would just like to tell you a very small incident. You know, in 2017, there was a Qatar's blockade that came about by Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt. The country is small. The requirements may not be that small, but there is a value which is far more, even if the volume is not. But they were completely cordoned off, so they could not get any products, and they were heavily dependent on their supplies from Saudi Arabia, UAE, and elsewhere. So what happened is, in that time, they not only started developing their own expertise, but the Indian companies, which did not have had a problem in accessing the market, were suddenly opened up. And our trade in first year alone went up by more than 83% to Qatar. They are looking for much more to work with, although they want to go in for the self-reliance mode as well. But the country is rich and want to do with this. I have another small story which I came across from one of the person all of you know is Mr. Yusuf Ali, who has this chain of Lulu markets and one of the richest guys. He took a great advantage of that opportunity. He flew in milk from UK to Qatar during the early days or early times of the blockade. So opportunities, when they arrive, immediately we need to work on it. We need to look for it. I'm very happy that the government of India has recently announced setting up of the food parks or food processing special economic zones through the budget, and are providing a much more information and assistance to the industry. That should go much farther away from there. So we have an agriculture policy. Government of India in 2018, I think, came out with an agricultural export policy. And as I am now working with, also as an advisor with the NCDC, National Cooperative Development Corporation, I would like to say that in India, a large quantity of agriculture products are also under the cooperative sector. And that is one area from where we can work together to export and to meet a lot of demands. That sector, of course, requires far more toning up as far as the technology adoption is concerned, as far as the standards, meeting the standards. So internally, if we are able to do that, then I think that we should do and try to develop the C2C kind of a model, cooperative to cooperative model also. That could be of a great help to us. One last point I would like to mention is that we do face occasional problems in different markets because of the WTO agreement or agriculture. When you see that these countries, we don't have so much in the WANA region, but we see it from other countries, and that who pressurize and who have a much larger share of food products in these countries, as was mentioned, whereas we have about 10 to 12%. So that means the rest of 70, 80% is coming from elsewhere. Turkey is another country which is also moving very fast into this sector. So we need to work together, because this agreement had essentially three pillars. One was market access, second was export competition, and domestic support. Now, all these three are absolutely essential from our point of view, but then all three come across as the problems that we have from Europe and the problem that we have from the United States, which needs to be worked together, and we have to really focus. Last point I would like to make is we are neglecting certain hotspots in the region. Although we keep providing assistance, whether it is by way of vaccines or medical supplies or by way of food aid. We have just given to Syria some 2,000 metric tons of rice. But what is important is that this is the time when these countries are possibly going to be stabilizing, that we need to be present ourselves. I have mentioned I have lived in Jordan, and I know that Jordan provides a great base for many companies to relocate there for one reason, because we are not in the government so keen to have free trade agreements at the moment. But Jordan has a free trade agreement with almost all major markets in the world. And I can tell you about the textile sector. We have about 22 Indian textile factories there who are exporting from there, just value addition and exporting to the markets, so about $500 million. So this is the place where you can set up your industries, you can set up a food processing, and then you start using those markets. Proximity. Second is they have access to all the markets, including, and this is one country which has the maximum number of free trade agreements with different countries. I have proposed that we should have it with them ourselves, but even if we are not, some of the more enterprising Indian companies could look at the possibility of starting making their base from there, add some value addition from the Indian imports, and then just go ahead and do it. So that provides you an additionality and an additional move into the larger market and into the areas. We need to collaborate also in agriculture sector through technology, through our expertise. We have agricultural agreements with various countries, but they have very often been rather defunct, I would say, in practice. So perhaps those could be revived as well. Of course, we have to address the TBTs at every day, every now and then, which our friends from our embassies will be able to highlight a little more. Thank you once again for inviting me, and I look forward to any questions or listening to other presentations. Thank you once again, Mr. Rajora.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your highly knowledgeable information, focusing on broader issues and also highlighting 4H: health, hunger, high technology, and habitat, and also mentioning about horticulture, fruits and vegetables as opportunities for Indian companies and many such other opportunities. We have also noted, sir, as you highlighted, the significance of food security and its collaboration in this area between the two region, India and WANA countries. Now to move on, just by way of sharing the information to our participants, I would like to mention that India-WANA virtual expo is already on, and they can visit after this webinar. The link is now given in front of you on the backdrop. This can be noted, and there are about 40 companies. Their names and logos are also there. So it is a good opportunity for everyone to connect and find some business opportunities here. Now I have great pleasure inviting Mr. Rajiv Arora, Second Secretary, Embassy of India and UAE, to kindly share his perspective on this important subject. Mr. Arora, please.
Thank you. A very good morning to all speakers and participants from WANA region, and very good afternoon to speakers and participants from India. It gives me immense pleasure to join this webinar on India's agriculture and food exports. At the outset, I would like to mention that food and agriculture exports is one of the priority area of the embassy, and in our outreach efforts, we have organized three big events on agriculture and foods during the last 6 months, which witnessed participation from senior level participation from government and businesses in the UAE. As we know, the agriculture is the most important sector of Indian economy, as it provides tremendous potential for value addition in the food processing sector. The export of food products has gained more prominence after COVID-19 pandemic has caused disruptions in the food supply chain around the world and raised concern about the food security. Even during the difficult time of pandemic and lockdowns, India took care not to disturb the world food supply chain and continued to export. During the difficult time of the pandemic and lockdowns, India played an important role in continuing UAE's supply of food products. With a growing demand worldwide for safe, healthy and organic foods, India has potential to become food bowl of the world. It is relevant to mention that UAE attaches strategic significance to its food security objectives as it imports more than 85% of its food requirement. India has been a trusted partner for the UAE in terms of meeting its food requirement. India and UAE are cooperating to establish an India-UAE food corridor, which will entail UAE investments of $5 to 7 billion into India's food parks, contract farming, cold storage, warehouses, fruit and vegetable hubs, food processing, etc., with the objective of tripling the value of UAE food imports from India from 2.2 billion at present to 6 to 7 billion within the next 5 years. India and UAE share historic people-to-people relations and a strong cultural affinity. We know each other's cuisine and taste. The UAE is also a place of diverse nationalities. The diversities of UAE offer a potential opportunity for both Indian food exporters and UAE businesses to introduce wider range of food products of India to consumers here. Due to higher income levels, the demand of healthy and easy to cook food is on the rise. I hope the ASSOCHAM's Food Pro Expo will provide an opportunity for a meaningful exchange between participating Indian exporters and businesses from UAE and WANA region, explore and promote new business partnerships in this important sector. I wish all the participants a very productive engagement in this virtual expo. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Arora, so much for giving a knowledge to all our participants and the priority areas on agri and food sector, and also highlighting the significance of value addition in these products. Now I invite Mr. Ravi Kumar Jain, Second Secretary, Indian Embassy in Bahrain, to kindly share his views on this subject.
Namaskar. Good afternoon to you all. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
So it's my pleasure to join in the webinar on enhancing India-WANA partnership in food sector as a representative from Embassy of India, Bahrain. I must say that this webinar and virtual expo both has come at a very opportune time when the issue of food security has gained more significance than ever. My thanks goes to ASSOCHAM for organizing this important event. India and Kingdom of Bahrain have historically enjoyed cordial and friendly relations, and trade is one of the most important aspects of our multifaceted relation. As mentioned by Ambassador Tribunayar, that it goes back to 5,000 years back to the Dilmun civilization. This is reflected in numbers also. India is ranked as one of the top 10 trading partners of Bahrain. Bilateral trade figure is approximately $1 billion since past few years, and India has a positive balance of trade with Bahrain. As far as food exports are concerned, both agro-based and otherwise, these items have been a major part of India's export to Bahrain. If we look at trade figures of 2020, it shows that out of 10 products being exported to Bahrain, 4 belong to food category. Like semi-milled rice, it is the topmost export from India to Bahrain, valued at approximately $50 million, and has a share of approximately 75% of total import by Bahrain. Similarly, boneless meat, it also occupies a major share of more than 70% of total imports of Bahrain. Refined sugar crystal, it accounts about 21% of India's share in total import of Bahrain. Apart from These items, fresh fruits, vegetable, processed food, and cereal also occupy a large part of India's trade with Bahrain. If we look at total export figure of agriculture and agro-based products from India to Bahrain, it is approximately 175 million in 2019. And it has increased almost by 60% from 2012. These trade figures I am mentioning are enough to signify the importance of trade in food products between India and Bahrain. From Bahraini perspective, agriculture is one of the traditional activities in Bahrain, but it contributes to national GDP only less than 1%. Bahrain is heavily dependent on imports to satisfy its needs, and it's a small and prosperous economy, and the government here has taken various reform measures to improve its economy. So demand for agricultural and processed food is expected to increase in this region in future. We have identified some of the products and segment where there is ample scope to give boost to our export to Bahraini market. One is wheat. Bahrain imports a major share of its wheat from Australia and Lithuania. India has a share of only 3% in its total import of wheat. With forecast of India's export of wheat rising in near future, Bahrain is a good option for India to look at due to its proximity and ease of trade. Similarly, cereal preparations and processed foods. In the fresh fruits and vegetable, we need to look closely at mango export strategy. Trade figure shows that India's share in Bahrain, India's export of mango to Bahrain has remained stagnant at about 25% since 2012. With extremely good quality of Indian mangoes vis-a-vis other mangoes varieties available in Bahraini market, a focused action plan needs to be chalked out to improve India's market share, and we believe that it is achievable. Organic product is another area where we can increase our export. Now, challenge before us is not only to maintain our market share, but also to increase it by giving more focus on export of premium products or products which have undergone value addition, as mentioned by Director Sri Praveen Kumar, such as organic food, processed food items, beverages, dairy product, etc. Brand India promotion in the food sector, especially varieties of food, processed food, could be undertaken by having catalog shows at major international events of Bahrain. One of them is BICS. Preparation of products to the various stakeholders in Bahrain, holding live cookery presentation or having tasting kiosks of the product at major supermarket can be useful in increasing our export to Bahrain. One of the suggestions from our side with respect to increasing our export is harmonization with international standards and practices and certification testing, etc. It will be very useful to substitute post-arrival testing with pre-shipment inspections. Encourage testing laboratories to obtain accreditation from international agencies, streamline certification system, and have a good understanding of MRL levels in food items, etc. at farmer level. The government of Bahrain takes the issue of food security quite seriously and is one of the focus sector as per Economic Vision 2020 of Government of Bahrain. It is stepping up efforts to achieve food security and self-sufficiency by planning to boost stocks of local produce. A government company for food security is set to be launched in the first quarter of this year itself, despite pandemic. Hence, the sector also offers opportunities for investment and joint venture for Indian companies. Bahrain's Central Gulf location and superb links to the rest of the Middle East with strong market connectivities and added benefit from this perspective. Post-COVID, the mission has received a number of queries related to this sector, which amplifies the plan of Bahrain related to its food security. Queries on hydroponic farming and related technology, establishment of food processing units, dairy equipment and machinery. So it's leaning toward this sector. Therefore, we believe that expertise in technology in the food sector also present opportunity for Indian side through export of services in related area. This is a vast sector and opportunities are immense. I have presented a view mainly from Bahraini side of opportunities. We are always available to address queries of potential or aspiring business from both sides, and we can be reached at our email ID com.bahrain@mea.gov.in. I am concluding my remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. You have highlighted so many important issues. India's DOP position, which is in favor of India, and also issues related to the Bahrain's dependence on imports and India opportunities in the products like boneless meat, refined sugar, fruits and vegetables, wheat, organic products, and also highlighting certain areas of related to harmonization, certification system and standards, and food security related issues. Thank you so much for all this. And now I have great pleasure inviting Mr. Kshitij Tyagi, First Secretary, Embassy of India in Cairo.
Thank you very much. Respected Ambassador Anil Trigonyatsa, distinguished participants, and my dear colleagues from missions in the region. I'm really happy to be here today, albeit virtually, at this very important event that's been organized by ASSOCHAM. I'd just very briefly attempt to put the economic engagement that we have with Egypt into perspective, especially as regards this sector, and also a few wrinkles perhaps that may need ironing out as we go forward. India and Egypt, of course, we've had relations which are age-old, rooted in antiquity. We continue to be very close in all realms, be it political, economic, cultural. And Egypt today is one of India's most important trading partners in Africa. For instance, during 2019-20, the bilateral trade between the two countries was USD 4.5 billion, making India Egypt's 7th largest trade partner during the period. Indian companies have invested about over USD 3 billion in Egypt, and more than 50 Indian companies are present in the Egyptian market. We are happy that some Egyptian companies such as El Saudi Group, Capri Coatings and Bitumode have investments in India. We are attempting to enhance these investments as we engage with our interlocutors here. Egypt is rightly called the gift of the Nile. It's predominantly an agrarian society with a population of over 100 million. Food security has become a priority for the government here. The Egyptian government aims to attain this food security through a two-pronged approach. Firstly, by improving the agricultural productivity, thereby creating a surplus through modern technology-driven approaches. This has enabled the country to become a leading exporter of food items, namely fruits, vegetables, rice, etc. You may recall that during the onion shortages in the recent past, Egyptian onions were imported in large quantities to India. The second approach adopted by the authorities here is to minimize agricultural imports by promoting setting up of local food-based industries like Johanna, Adita, etc., which are located in different industrial complexes, mostly around the outskirts of cities like Cairo and Alexandria. The efforts have borne fruit, and the country now boasts of a large number of food manufacturers and processing plants which cater to the local population. Additionally, some Gulf-based companies like Saudi-based Almarai with PepsiCo have set up a joint venture named Beiti, which is one of the largest dairy-based manufacturers in the country, apart from other local companies. One can surmise that Egyptian food market is highly competitive And from our experiences in recently held virtual buyer-seller meets, for instance, in specific sectors like tea and spices, we can confidently say that it's a price-sensitive market. The entry strategies into this market can be facilitated by having suitable local agents and representative offices in Cairo. I shall come to this point again later. The major food imports, let's discuss, of Egypt are wheat, maize, meat, and soybean. Egypt is one of the world's largest importers of wheat. India and Brazil are the biggest suppliers of meat to Egypt. However, some challenges remain. I would like to bring to your notice that Indian wheat is currently banned for import to Egypt due to presence of ergot. Milk and milk-based items from India are also restricted due to the issue of aflatoxin content. Cases of higher residual pesticide content found in Indian tea and spices. Presence of sarcocystis in meat, issue of compliance with the standards of inspection set up by the Egyptian National Food Safety Authority, etc., have been raised by the Egyptian side. These issues were discussed in various platforms, and the mission is facilitating the interaction between stakeholders from both Egyptian and Indian side to resolve these issues, which is, of course, an ongoing process. So I would use this platform to request all stakeholders to strive for removal of these barriers. We are also striving towards the same goal so that the Indian food importers can have access to Egyptian markets, conforming with the requirements of the Egyptian authorities. Another thing that I would like to bring to your notice, Ambassador also mentioned about the free trade agreements. Now, Egypt has signed free trade agreements with countries in the neighborhood. It's a member of COMESA agreement, which makes some of the agricultural items cheaper than their Indian counterparts. I would cite the example of Kenyan tea, for example, that's taken a lion's share of the Egyptian market as a result of the preferential trade agreement. Similarly, we recently explored the market for supply of Indian apples, wherein we were informed that the trade agreement between Egypt and EU countries made apples from countries like Italy, Greece, and Poland very reasonable. And therefore, the markets have very few players from outside these countries. To sum up, I would like to mention that the exporters of food items to Egypt, that unlike any other markets in the Gulf, which has a sizable population of Indian diaspora, Egypt has only little above 4,000 Indian community members, which are spread across the country. However, it's a population of over 100 million and a market that cannot be ignored by the Indian exporters. Therefore, a thorough study of the local preferences, tastes, and inclinations are recommended. The language and cultural differences might pose some challenges, might act as barriers, since the official communication is predominantly in Arabic. So it is advisable to chart out an entry strategy with inputs from local partners and agencies. And I would like to add that the mission can assist in this regard. With that, I'd like to sum it up, and I take this opportunity to convey my best wishes to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tyagi, for giving details of the economic engagement between India and Egypt and highlighting Egyptian government's focus on enhancing agriculture productivity by modern technology, and also, opportunities for India in rice, onion, fresh fruits and vegetables, soybean, and maize. While there are issues related to standards in wheat, milk products, and meat, milk, apple, and tea, all these items. So, and also the food security related matters. I hope our participants have gained a lot of knowledge on this. And also you had mentioned that the Egyptian market is very highly competitive and price sensitive. So all our exporters, those who are listening and attending this, they have taken note of this. Thank you so much. And now I request Mr. Praveen Kumar, Second Secretary, Indian Embassy in Oman, to kindly share his thoughts on the subject.
Thank you. Ambassador Anil Trigunath, sir, Mr. Praveen Kumar, Director, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, distinguished panelists, my fellow colleagues from Indian missions, distinguished guests, business representatives from India, Oman and WANA region. Namaskar and good morning from here on behalf of Embassy of India, Muscat. I begin with my thanks to ASSOCHAM for their continuous efforts to promote trade and economic cooperation between India and Oman. Today's webinar on enhancing India-WANA partnership in food sector is an excellent initiative to bring together business persons for developing trade and investment partnerships between India and Oman. As we all know, India and Oman are strategic partners, and our economic relations are the backbone of this relationship. India and Oman have been trading partners for the centuries. And if we talk about the statistics, Indian firms have invested heavily in Oman in various sectors. And today there are more than 4,000 India-Oman joint ventures that currently operational with a combined value of over USD 7.5 billion. In the COVID period also, India has proved to be a reliable supplier of essential commodities to Oman. There is a lot of potential for us to collaborate in a more institutionalized manner. India is among Oman's top trading partner, and if we go by the trading figures in the financial year 2018-19, it was $5 billion, which saw an upward trend during 1920, and it reached around $5.93 billion. India's export to Oman for food and agri sector for this year 2019-20 was around 261 million USD, and we must acknowledge that there is enough potential to enhance trade in this sector. If we talk about business opportunities in Oman for Indian investors and companies, then Oman is a strategic location as a gateway to the Middle East as well as Africa, and it is well known to our Indian companies. Oman government has laid considerable emphasis on bringing legislative reforms to boost business environment. Oman government has recently issued and updated various legislation that are in line with global best practices, creating a quantum leap in investment and doing business environment. Oman's special economic zones offer a number of incentives which make setting up new ventures their economical viable. And Indian companies are already one of the biggest investors in various free zones of Oman like Sohar, Salalah, and even in Duqm. And we are happy to announce that the first project in Duqm that has become operational is an Indian investment. Oman ranks 68 among 190 economies in the case of ease of doing business in the year 2019 as per the World Bank ratings. And given its geographic location, Oman is investing heavily in logistic capabilities across road, rail, sea and air as it aims to become a major hub in the region. Omani government also is very keen to have direct trade links with India instead of depending on import-export to a third country. This opens up a significant opportunity for Indian companies to tap the Omani market. Oman Shipping Company has recently started operations to 2 ports in India, Nhava Sheva and Mundra from Sohar port in Oman. The focus of Oman's government vision 2040 is to shift from non-renewable resources to a productive and diversified economy, which is founded on innovation and driven by the private sector. Under Oman's Tanfeed investment program for economic diversification, there are various opportunities for Indian companies in priority sectors such as manufacturing, tourism, transport and logistics, mining and fisheries, which also includes food security in all aspects. If we talk more specifically about agro and food sector in Oman, then UN's FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, estimated Oman's food import will touch USD 4.8 billion in the coming years in 21 onwards, as against USD 2.1 billion in 2010. And Oman's food imports mainly includes grains, seasonal fruits, dairy products, poultry and meat. And India has a lot of potential in these products. around 57% of Oman's poultry demand is met through imports. So we can tap this opportunity. The food demand is projected to grow at 6.9 million tons by 2040 from 4.7 million tons in the year 2017, with an annual rate of 1.2 to 1.8%. I must say that food security is a priority sector for government of Oman, and there is interest in exploring the possibility of setting up storage and logistic hubs through India-Oman joint ventures. The fisheries sector has also received very considerable support from the Omani government, as it is a part of its economic diversification as well as food security plans. It is considered as a pillar of economic growth due to its renewable sources. Oman also boasts great economic potential from this sector due to its long coastline, multiple sites for commercial aquaculture projects, and availability of supporting infrastructure such as ports, roads, and logistic networks. In case of processed and packaged food market in Oman, it is very substantial and increasing due to continuous focus towards a non-oil economy, changing lifestyle patterns and local manufacturing. There is a lot of big presence of multinational food companies, including from India, who continue to boost the popularity of packaged food among consumers. And to boost further trade in this food sector, a wide range of quality products should be introduced from India with focus on taste and health at affordable prices in view of growing health conscious consumer base. And Oman has a considerable demand for health and organic food. Of course, there are some challenges as well in the packaged food sector, like greater price sensitivity, changing taste patterns, lower shelf life of products, and need for adequate infrastructure and equipment in the supply chain, such as control ambient temperature. In Oman, as with the GCC, investment from government and private players is more inclined towards augmenting the domestic food production capacity and supply, in addition to securing food sources from other resource-rich countries. The quality of agricultural products is paramount for the Omani market. Issues like pesticide residue and its conformity to the laid down standards should be ensured. Expeditious transportation by shortest routes for agri products, international standard export packing facility, exit point infrastructure at port facilitating swift trade, and integrated cold chains are very important to maintain the freshness of the agri products. For this, cold chain and logistic support is paramount, along with standardized packaging with labeling in Arabic in Oman. And as increasing number of companies are investing in major food processing facilities for storage within the country, in addition to local producers, many international firms are also building facilities to serve the regional markets. And Indian companies has a lot of potential to come forward and invest in this region. From the embassy side, I must say that for the embassy, promotion of economic cooperation is our highest priority. The embassy remains available for any assistance that Indian or Omani companies may need. And we once again thanks ASSOCHAM for taking this initiative and wish you all a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for highlighting different opportunities in food sector between India and Oman, and also mentioning about the strategic location of Oman to boost business environment bilaterally. You also highlighted India opportunities in products, seasonal fruits, poultry, fisheries sector, processed food in non-oil food particularly, and health and organic foods. Of course, quality and high standards supply chain remain the challenging areas, which all our exporters have noted. And now I request Mr. G.K. Pant, First Secretary, Indian Embassy in Morocco, to kindly share his views on the subject. Mr. Pant, please.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Pant.
Good morning, Ambassador Trigunath, Mr. Praveen Kumar, Director, Ministry of Commerce, and other distinguished panelists. Today, I'll be speaking about the opportunities for Indian companies in the food and food processing industries. For the year 2019, bilateral trade between India and Morocco stood at 2.1 billion USD, and Indian exports to Morocco were 1160 US dollar million. Exports of spices, tea, coffee from India to Morocco stood at 35 million US dollars, which is 8.6% of the share. This included cumin seeds, turmeric, ginger, pepper, and packed spices and other spices. The top exporter of spices / tea to Morocco is China at the moment, and China's share is US dollar 234 million. But most of this comprises of tea, which comes in the form of gunpowder, which is used for making Moroccan tea. And this is an area where, an area which is untapped at the moment, and Indian companies can look into exporting tea or entering into the tea market. Embassy of India had tried to organize a visit for the tea association from Morocco to India, but due to COVID-19 that has not materialized. But we will be trying that the delegation visits as soon as the situation improves. Rice is another item which is being exported to Morocco, basmati rice. The normal rice is usually available here, which is round quality, and it comes also from Thailand and other places. Wheat, Morocco is completely dependent on wheat imports. Most of the wheat is being imported, but we don't have any trade agreement with Morocco. That is why we are not able to take advantage of exporting wheat to Morocco. There are restrictions on payment of imported orders, which are often problematic for the Indian exporters. Like the Moroccan importers can only pay 30% advance, and then 70% is paid to the Indian companies when the things land over here. And there are so many disputes. Every week we get one complaint that the payment has not been made or payment has been delayed. So these are the sectors which apparently the trade is happening, and we can look into it, and if we can improve the trade in spices sector and rice, and maybe we can look into millet also, which is another area where India can do better. But given the distances and lack of trade agreement, I don't think it will go any further. This is the best the Indian companies are doing over here. But in 2019, Morocco government has started the Green Morocco program, and Morocco Investment and Export Development Agency, AMDI, has now identified following potential sectors in the agro-food industries where Indian companies can look for investments. This is dairy and cheese industry, spice industry, fruit and vegetable valuation, organic industry, vegan, refrigerated storage of agri-food products, meat industry, African products processing and marketing hubs like mango, pineapple, and cashew, and Arabic gum. Companies investing in these sectors will be exempt from 20% TVA. They will also get 20% of the machinery cost as subsidy. And AMDI will also help in identifying the land for the investors. National Agency for Promotion of Small and Medium Enterprises, that is Maroc PME, will pay up to 1 million dirhams as help from government to each project. The main advantage of investing in these projects will be access to European market, because Morocco has an agreement with the European Union, so the exports from here are very easy. For example, if when one sets up a cashew processing unit in Morocco, then there will be access available to European markets. Delivery by road will also be feasible. The same is true for tomato puree or other processed foods. I was very recently speaking to one agricultural investor who had come from India, and he was looking at the opportunities for production of ginger in Morocco using stack production method. So by using that method, he said in 1 acre of land, we can get a produce which will be equivalent to 10 acres of land. And this is an area, these are the areas one can look into. Similarly, production of spices, including cumin, saffron, red bell pepper, can be looked into, because it has an import market which is 700 million dirhams and export market is 213 million dirham from Morocco. And I would also request the Indian companies, there are many important agricultural fairs which are happening in Morocco. One is SIAM, the Salon International de l'Agriculture au Maroc, which happens every year in April. But this year it has been postponed due to COVID. But usually we have a regular participation from the Indian companies, but this is one fair which should be looked into so people can get a better idea about the opportunities available. And I would also request the exporters or the people who are interested in investing to come to Morocco. Usually what they do, they just send a query from there and they don't want to come and make any research over the market or to look for themselves that what are the opportunities available or what are the reliable partners who can be identified. We try to help them, but that is not sufficient. So I would request that as soon as the situation normalizes, the Indian companies or Indian investors or Indian exporters should come and see for themselves. I agree that this is, I have raised this question in my previous interactions also, that this is a country where the presence of Indians is very less. Even though Morocco has very good opportunities for investments, but Indian investors, except for 8 or 10 Indian companies which have their presence over here, not much interest has been shown. So I would request that this is a slice of Europe. Morocco is a slice of Europe in Africa, and infrastructure is of top quality, and people should come and look for opportunities over here. That's what I'll have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pant, for giving so many ideas, sharing your views on and India opportunities in tea, spices, and our competition with China, and also highlighting products like dairy, fruits, vegetables, refrigerated products, and also highlighting the agreement with EU market, and of course challenges on the payment restrictions, etc. Thank you so much for all this. And now I request, we are joined by Mr. Hemant Kumar Singh, MD Gulf Unique International LLC from Oman, and I request Mr. Singh to please share his thoughts from the on this subject.
Good morning and good afternoon, distinguished guests. Oman's unique geographical location and well-established seaports and a strong infrastructure guarantees the investment in food sector in this region. As rightly said by Shri Praveen Kumarji, Second Secretary, Embassy of Oman, of India in Oman, as part of Oman's Vision 2040, the government is also working on finding a new income that supports oil revenues and supersedes in the future. Accordingly, Oman's economic development policy emphasizes the expansion of non-oil sectors like agriculture and food industry. As a key pillar supporting this vision, the Sultanate of Oman aims at to attract sustainable investment in food sector and promote the export of Omani food products like dates, honey, dairy, eggs, and red meat. The private sector, in fact, in Oman, is also playing a significant role in developing the potential of agricultural sector. For example, Oman Flour Mills investment in egg production facility in collaboration with international investors. Oman's food imports are expected to reach USD 4.8 billion as on year ending 2020 and GCC to the tune of 53.1 billion USD. Oman has also allocated USD 10 billion to the Duqm Economic Free Zone and seeking another USD 10 billion in foreign investment by 2022. The investment and export opportunities in Arabian Peninsula sub-region is very bright for the Indian exporters. In fact, the Mashrek sub-region, which includes Cyprus, is also a market providing the best subsidies for investors in food and agriculture sector and the cheapest agriculture land lease models and India can gain advantage by participating in their agricultural sector by implanting India's best innovative agricultural practices. WANA is the most food import dependent region in the world, and India stands at the best advantageous position to export in sectors mainly in herbal and organic food products after understanding the non-tariff measures in this part of the region. I would like to end with inviting interested food processing companies to join hands with traditional Omani Halwa partnership in this business, which can be a huge market in India and open a new relation between India and Oman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Singh. And I think now we come to the conclusion of this discussion, as we have already opened the virtual expo, and many of our participants are visiting those things. They have logged into the virtual expo, and there are B2B meetings going on there, and this will continue for next 3 days. And with this, it is now indeed a proud privilege for me on behalf of ASSOCHAM to propose a very hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest, Ambassador Mr. Anil Tringuria sir, for being with us today at this important discussion, sir. We are indeed grateful to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time. Your valuable knowledge, suggestions will definitely help the industry and those who have been attending today's discussion. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the embassy representatives here. They have been very kind enough to join and give their, country-wise and specific product-wise knowledge to all of us. Now, before we close, I request Mr. Vivek Chandra to kindly say final words and also convey your thanks to all the people here on behalf of the Food and Value Addition Council of ASSOCHAM. And again, I convey my grateful thanks to each and every speaker, the DP world, Mr. Vivek Chandra, of course, our chief guest, and Mr. Hemant Kumar, including Mr. Chandra, please, final words.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rajora. And first of all, again, our deepest gratitude and thanks to Ambassador Triguniat for shepherding this session and for laying the stage. And also cannot be underscored enough how we had country-specific insights into the opportunities and into the challenges. And the biggest thing that I received from all the missions was how they are going to be available to any one of us who wants to come in and start business, and the valuable expertise that they can have in terms of the connections and the advice that is available. I think while Ambassador Triguniat laid out the 4 H's and really built on those in terms of high technology, health, habitat, etc. If I was to take out, I think what I heard from all the experts was the fact that while we sell a lot of food into the WANA region, our share of that is still very low. And that in most countries, we sort of, in the overall scheme of things, we are in a single-digit share. And that there are large opportunities that are available across the region. These were coming through in things like poultry, in processed food. I think there's a lot of emphasis which was happening in most of the places in terms of processed foods. But I think a few of the other big themes that were struck was food security is a very big issue, exacerbated by this COVID crisis, and that the countries will be taking steps, and anybody who partners in that would be welcome. Health is another rising trend, and whatever we do must conform to that and the standards that are laid out, and therefore organic does have a big opportunity as well. I think related to all of this, across board, we heard about MRLs meeting standards and how the standards are moving from codex to more stricter and more stringent European standards. And at the end of all of this is that we will have to contend with the other trade agreements and the tariff and non-tariff barriers. And I think this is, again, an area where the missions can help us. So I think there's a lot of food for thought, a lot of very, very important points that have been raised. And I think this is going to be very helpful to people who are going there. So once again, thank you so much for taking your time and giving us these insights, giving us these directions. And to ASSOCHAM, I say wonderful session that is again being set up. This entire thing that we are leading in terms of webinar and virtual, and I wish great success to this particular one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Look forward to meeting
Thank
you
you,
again.
sir.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you all.